guys! So first of all, I'm just very impressed that I'm getting this review up on time because it is the beginning of the fall semester and I teach and I'm a PhD student and wow, life is crazy. But I've been trying to do this, not like the day after I'm supposed to post these or whatever. Michaela and I are supposed to have a content schedule. It's fine. So today I want to talk about a book that I did read as an ARC, but it is already out, so you actually may have already read it. I don't know. But I read it as an ARC in case there's any discrepancies. Every once in a while there's a tiny bit. But I'm talking today about the book No One Does It Like You by Katie Shepherd. Now, one thing I will say is that this book is connected to Katie's previous book, Sweeten the Deal. I did not know that before I started. I have not read Sweeten the Deal, but I will say that after the last couple of books where I have spent an inordinate amount of time being like, if you're going to do this, you need to tell us because it's annoying. What I will say is that this is actually a series of 2 books or books that are connected where I don't feel like you have to read Sweeten the Deal to understand this book. It kept those characters at enough of a distance where it was fine. Maybe you would know a few more things about these characters, but that was a huge relief. The problem is that not much else in this book really had it working for me, and we're going to talk about that. But first, to tell you about the book. So back in their early 20s, Tom and Rose, our main characters, got married. They had been together in college and everybody was like, this is crazy, you can't get married this young, but they loved each other and they wanted to make it work. Tom was an aspiring Broadway actor and Rosie, I'm not sure if this was her plan all along, but she kind of fell into a life of doing finance stuff. And so they thought, oh, we'll go to New York, we'll do this together. Their marriage did not go well. It lasted about a year. And the really big issue was that Tom got wrapped up in his stuff. Rosie, it was not what she expected. And they just didn't talk to each other basically and didn't tell the other person that they weren't getting what they needed out of the relationship. And it got to the point where Tom just kind of stopped coming home and Rosie said, divorce papers. So this is 10 years later after this, and Tom and Rosie have never forgotten about each other, the fact they couldn't make it work, and really left it quite unresolved because again they really didn't speak to each other. And Rosie has kind of climbed up the ranks in the finance world, although she's now working for a family-owned company, and it's all not exactly what she thought it would be, while helping her aunt run the family inn. The inn was already in some decline, but it's about to get a lot worse. The book opens with a hurricane that hits Martha's Vineyard, where the inn is located, as well as the lower parts of New York. And both Rose and Tom are caught in it in different ways. For Rose, it's that the hurricane does incredible damage to the inn to the point where they're not even sure it's salvageable. For Tom, he's trying to escape it with the cast of his current Broadway production, which includes a close female friend and a previous Hollywood actor named Boyd, who's basically just like a super huge hunk with not a lot going on in his head, but he brings a lot of news to their production. So they're happy he's there for the attention, even though no one really likes him too much. And Boyd, this character, decides to drive into a puddle during a hurricane, which is not a puddle. It's basically a lake. His car goes dead and it starts to basically just like take his car away down the road. He tries to bail out and Tom has to dive into the water and save him. But before he does this, realizing that he could come to incredible physical harm, after 10 years of nothing, silence, he calls Rosie and tells her that he still loves her and he wishes that they could have made it work and try to get back together. Dives into the water, saves Boyd, and ends up being plastered all over the news and gossip magazines and everything because there's like a picture of him, I guess, like, carrying this action hero hunk out of the water. It takes Rosie a couple of months to get this message because Tom has called an old number, but when she does it, she's also staring down the barrel of a family that she is invested in but does not seem invested in her or helping her or her aunt fix up the family inn. And so she has no one to turn to, she feels like, to help her fix the inn. All of her family wants to sell it and she refuses to let it go. So she hears this message and thinks it's a sign, shows up on Tom's doorstep and says, "Will you help me?" Tom obviously says yes. He also thinks this is the moment that they're going to get back together. They both reference the voicemail. You know, Rosie asks him multiple times, "Did you mean it?" He says yes. And that's when things start to get weird, both in like hijinks, haha, ridiculous romance ways, and also like character and relationship ways. So Rosie seems to think that Tom has more skills at renovation than he actually does, and part of the issue with their marriage was that Tom just didn't do anything. Rosie's an extremely competent, organized person, and Tom is like a little bit all over the place. I believe it's implied in the author's note that he has ADHD, and he's like, seems very like, you know, like can't keep things straight and all that, but it's like part of his brain doesn't mean to do it, right? It's actually not explored in anywhere but the author's note, but whatever. And so Tom is like, I'm going to like learn how to do home repairs and show Rosie that I can be different than the person that I was during our marriage, that I can be a competent person, that I can contribute to the partnership. But he's like not telling her that he really doesn't know what he's doing rather. So it's like really screwed up from the beginning. And when they get out there, there are some really funny scenes. There's some issues with, you know, basic things like gross cleanup after a hurricane, but also bees. I'm terrified of bees. That scene was not funny to me. There were bees. Realizing that he's in over his head, Tom calls his female best friend, who for some reason tells Boyd, and all of a sudden Boyd shows up to like lend his muscle or something. And with him start to come these fangirls, and basically the entire crew that ends up actually fixing up this inn is made up of fangirls. And Rosie is like, I'm pretty sure they just know how to do everything. And I was like, plumbing? Do they know how to do plumbing? I'm so confused. So, I mean, but that part, like, it's romance ridiculous, right? Like, it's the Hallmark movie of, like, you know, the whole town comes together and somehow there is someone who knows how to do everything, and they're all, like, there are multiple hijinks things that happen, plus these friend girls are very, like, into Boyd and Tom being a thing after the river rescue, and it's really ridiculous. Like, I don't want to give any more of the actual scenes away, but it just seems to like ping pong from like one ridiculous scenario to another, as these things certainly do. And so that point was very silly. It kind of stretches the imagination, but as long as you don't think about it too hard, it's fine. The thing that could not disengage my brain is the fact that I am so confused by Rosie and Tom's relationship. First of all, we are told in the beginning that they both miss each other and that they regret how the relationship ended and that they're still very much in love with each other. We are told this. The showing, a little bit more difficult for this book, and they just cannot communicate. It's so weird. Like, after having this whole thing where Tom is very clearly stating, like, I want to get back together with you. What do you need me to do? And Rosie is like, help me fix up this inn, which is like a price tag, first of all. But also then she's like, well, like making it clear, like, oh no, we're just friends. We're not getting back together. When Tom has expressly said he wants back in her life to get back together. And then Rosie brings him out to the vineyard to help renovate this inn and do a lot of manual labor, and then is confused when he is like, so what's the steps to getting back together? And she's like, no, that's not what this is. Like, girl, you heard that voicemail. It was like literally the first time. Just, what do you mean you're confused? It feels awkward and honestly not that great. And just like the awkwardness continues from there. It's like, even when they do have really good emotional conversations, it feels like they don't have a resolution. And so it's like, oh, I'm really glad you talked about that. But like, there's a step between talking about it and then actually like working through it. You can't just talk about it and then have it magically be resolved. Even though this is an explicit romance novel, I also mostly like, it's very clear, like they say that they are in lust with each other, and I recognize that objectively they are two very attractive people, but I was like, it just, the chemistry just felt very lacking between the two of them. I also just felt as the book goes on, so, you know, Rosie has asthma and is allergic to a lot of stuff, and Tom is constantly talking about how she's like really delicate and he needs to protect her. And Rosie's very big on, like, you know, she does want someone to take care of her, but she also doesn't want to be iced out of the renovation process. And that was a big thing of friction throughout the book that, again, I don't think was ever resolved. So obviously this is a romance novel and it ends in an expected way. And I'm sitting here going, I don't know that you two worked out like anything. This is not gonna go well. I would give this book like somewhere between 2.5 to 3 stars based on like the renovation hijinks and the very silly plot that was there, and like the cutesy found family thing going on is like, you know, these girls show up as fangirls, but like, you know, they end up, I'm not gonna spoil anything, but they end up having some really weird conversations like through the lens of fandom that Rosie is like, I can't believe that I'm actually like being brought to think philosophical things based on this. Like, that was all silly. It was very silly, and I have wanted silly for a long time, and I was really happy with that. But I think the problem was that, like, the overarching romance, like every single time those two were actually like trying to deal with each other in like a personal way, I was just like, I don't feel the chemistry. I'm confused by this conversation. And as a second chance romance, I don't know that y'all are actually working through your issues. One of my favorite things about second chance romances is there are characters who have this history and then have, I think it's just like more emotionally interesting. At least to me, I'm like very in this vibe right now. And so for a second chance romance not to really have the thing that I would basically be mostly looking for in it just made it feel generally underwhelming for me, even if I did enjoy like the outside silly plot of this like very, very silly weird Hallmark movie going on. I wouldn't say that I don't think you shouldn't read it. I certainly think that there are better second chance romances out there, but maybe if, like me, you need a little piece of silly after, for whatever reason, I've been reading a lot of grief-focused romance novels. Again, it was kind of what I was looking for in that regard, so I certainly wouldn't tell you not to spend an afternoon with it, but at the same time, if you are looking for a more emotionally interesting second chance book, there's better out there, and you could probably skip this one. As always, these are but my own opinions, so thank you to Edelweiss and the publisher for my arc so that I could give you guys this review of my opinion, right? If you are interested in this book, like I said, even though I read an arc, you can get it from your local library or your local bookstore or wherever you get your books, and come up with your own opinion and let me know what you think down in the comments after you have read it as well. If you've also read Sweeten the Deal, or I believe this is Katie Shepherd's third book, if you've read any of those and think that they are better or worse, because there's like part of me that does want to read Sweeten the Deal a little bit. The premise sounds interesting. Let us know down in the comments if that is worth it. Thanks, guys. Bye.